Hey, it's that time again. The Jank Diver Peasant Cube update for Foundations. While our mainline cube only got a couple of cards in each color, there's a lot more going on at the common and uncommon level. Remember that the best way to support Jank Diver Gaming and the Jank Tank podcast is to join our Discord server, draft with us, and give us your feedback. It's a great place to have opinions and discuss cubes as well as retail limited and more. Tim and I continue to do a peasant review, so check out our full thoughts there. This time, we were joined by Danelius from the Limited Level Up server, and he was a great voice who sold us on a couple of cards we probably wouldn't have considered otherwise. We're going to start off with white, and we're going to swap Patched Plaything for Cat Collector. Conceptually, I really like the Plaything for our white-black deck, but people didn't really take to it, and there's still 1 mana removal that'll kill this even once you've done the thing. Cat Collector looks like a solid value card that will join the club of pocket synergy cards, because having a steady source of life gain will make this card even stronger. Fear of Abduction just didn't quite get there. We rarely saw the ceiling and frequently were hitting the floor. Guarded Air has some overlap and possible friction with Imperial Oath, but we like both, so we're going to run them until Aether Drift comes out and then probably make a decision on one of them. Air has a lot of internal synergy with our Skyfisher reanimation packages and the like compared to Oath, which is more powerful to cast up front. Ambitious Farmhand is a card that has come in and out a few times. It's a decent value card, but we think Sunblessed Healer is going to be a forever type card. It's a reasonable 2-drop and a great value play. We have other ways to help hit your land drops, and we like that the healer can come down and immediately start attacking against slower opponent draws. Sheltered by Ghosts is an extremely obnoxious card, as any of the Duskmourn vets could attest to. We like that it was strong into the number of big expensive Flame Tongue combos we have, but it created too much tempo frequently and was miserable to play against more importantly. Snare isn't exactly what we're looking for, but it should be a decent removal spell, especially in decks that are looking to hold up mana on your opponent's turn. Condemn should be a direct upgrade on the Smite for most decks that are wanting to play it. White tends not to be the most controlling color in the cube, but we'll keep an eye on it in case 5 to 6 drops are getting Swords to Plowshare too frequently. We thought Wearing Guard would be a solid 1-drop, and man, this card sucked in all of our cubes. Even when you do the thing, it's not good enough, and if you don't do the thing, it's terrible. Dawnwing Marshal was a Danelius suggestion. It's a good 2-drop on curve to get early pressure and plays well in the go wide space that a lot of our Naya decks are running in. We're getting a bit dense on Army in a Cans, but we're going to swap Release the Dogs for a classic. Triple Good Spirits was absolutely incredible 9 years ago, and we're curious to see if it holds up. Battle Screech was busted, so I could buy that this card's still extremely powerful too. And then finally, we're going to swap Dog Umbra for Essence Reliquary. We had passed initially on Reliquary because it seems like it could create some extremely miserable gameplay experiences. People have asked about it, and we've polled the community. The general consensus was we should try it out. Just remember, when you're getting Journey to Nowhere looped or whatever other nonsense of infinite value you hit with, we tried to save you from the king of all Skyfishers. Moving into blue, we're getting a direct upgrade over a Modern Horizons 3 card, which is honestly kind of terrifying. Not much to say here. In general, 1/1 flyers are better than 0/1 non-flyers. Force Spike Bird has continued to be a menace. We aren't actually sure it's good, but when you get Force Spiked on curve, you do feel like you got completely bodied. Fable Trick gives us a similar tricksy, flashy, interactive game plan piece, but doesn't wreck the game on curve while having a bit better play later into the game, which should make it less polarizing. Nobody's really casting Spectral Sailor these days, and Phantasmal Shieldback was one that caught our eye. This card will be a decent roadblock, and you almost always will get your card back, and if your opponent decides to put a removal at it, you're going to feel really good. The Sailor was a totally fine card, but spending 4 to draw a card isn't exactly where we want to be. Syncopate is fine, sometimes good, and it can do what other counters may not be able to with all the recursion. But Remain is a classic, and Worst Reprieve is still probably going to be a banger. This was more of a what's the cut rather than anything specifically wrong with Syncopate. We are so back, and with a cowboy hat. We cut Mystic a long time ago when blue-based spell decks were the best thing to be doing, or among the best things to be doing. Since then, the power level has gone up, and the spells decks aren't winning nearly as much, so we felt more comfortable bringing back the Mystic, and it has a great new mustachioed art. So that's going to take us into black. And Little Yoggers has been getting some hype. If you listen to our main review, you'd know Chris is really high on this one. He likes it a lot. Lampad is probably a better finisher, but if you're able to get the engine going, the Gourmand should generate a lot of value. We'll have to see how this one pans out, whether it's better to have the more efficient chip damage with drawing a card or having the closing power that Lampad provides. Rebirth comes in and out a lot in this cube. I like it, but anytime we're tight on space to Tonk, the card comes out. It'll probably be back down the road. Revenge is an interesting card as a black-based spider spawning effect. I'm more interested in this one personally with things like Rakdos Sack or in combination with Wistdrinker Vampire, rather than the green-black grindy decks the spawning works with. Prowler is a great aggro 2-drop for black. The problem is that red and white, the colors that pair into this aggressive shell for black, simply have other great options, and what black's providing those decks isn't really a random 2-drop aggressive creature. I've defended this card a number of times and enjoy playing it, but Wriggling Grub is too interesting not to run. It's like 3 reassembling skeleton triggers up front. You need to be able to take advantage of the bodies, but if you can, this is pretty unparalleled value on 2 mana. How did Richter's Robber suck? On paper, this card looks so good. Somehow, though, it ends up just being bad. We're swapping this for an old school certified banger. Moan, for those who played in original Innistrad, is a great way to add additional board presence, and then later gives even more value as kind of a mini Rise of the Ants. Dreadfugue is a fine card, but almost always feels bad. It'll usually grab a card early, but not necessarily the one you want. And for 3 mana, you could be casting Thought Slizzard and get a 2/2 menace for your time. Life of Toshiro is a great 2 mana investment, providing some extra X1 hate that's always appreciated in this cube, and has great flexibility beyond that on top of coming with the 2/3 body. Huskbuster Swarm ended up being a huge downgrade. Hollow Marauder is busted where even for 5 mana you felt like you got a fine deal, and when you Huskbuster for relatively cheap, you don't even really feel like you got a good deal. We're seeding a bit more graveyard hate here, and additionally the extra bodies the Horde provide will be great in your sack-based black decks. The Shrekmobile is a fine but narrow card, and Tim and I really like Scornblade Berserker as a more flexible card. It's a solid value proposition that can open your board up to better early attacks. It plays better with the reanimation in the cube, and it's great for cards like Vesper Lark to be able to synergize there and provide grindy value. Finally, we're going to give Vampire Sovereign a rest. It's one of the better loop targets for all of the reanimation and recursion in the cube, but we find the High-Fae Negotiator a little more interesting. A 5th point of toughness hits some relevant breakpoints, and sometimes sacking can even be upside. In any case, we're going to try this to have a little bit of a different take on this effect, even if the 2 cards are very similar. All right, and that's going to take us into red, where we're going to start with Play With Fire being swapped for Burst Lightning. It's a basically strict upgrade. That's all. Dragon Tamer provides a more interesting 5-drop than a second 5-power haster, even if it might not be as good. I think if this were Charging Mosasaur, I'd be a bit more hesitant, but I have no emotional attachment to the board, so we're going to try this one out. Vesper Lark, Blood for Bones, Skyfishers, you know the drill, people. ANEP was a card that we were pretty low on in our review, but Danelius once again really sold us on giving this one a try. Skittering Precursor is solid in exactly red-black sack, but it's a pure payoff, and if you get the trigger, ANEP should be a generally stronger impact. Precursor occasionally lets you pop off with a card like Makeshift Munition or Lampad. It has some cool synergies with the landscapes, but overall it's a fairly narrow card. Atali's Favor is occasionally busted and frequently good, but we were very impressed by Glassworks and want to try it out in the cube. It plays well as a finisher against the green decks if they haven't found their life gain, and will give you bargain fuel for cards like High-Fae. Fear Fire Foes and its stupid commas are finally going away. This was one of the best and most oppressive cards in the cube, frequently killing a big creature and then cleaning out all your chump blockers as well. Seismic Wave is better on 3, it has some extra play as an instant, but doesn't have the ridiculous scaling option of being able to kill a very large creature like Fear Fire Foes does. All right, and that will take us into green. We're going to start with getting rid of Oozwag. It's a card that it exists. We're not really sure Wickerfolk's going to be good either, since it's a 4-mana card with no protection ETB or alternative cast option, but it was very good in the retail set, and we like the upside it can provide once you get Delirium active. So we've arrived. Visionary is apparently only 3 years old, but feels like a classic. Satina isn't a strict upgrade, but ramping your lands while fixing your colors and providing board presence as well as MDFC rebuys should all add a nice amount of upside to this slot. It does feel weird to be letting this one go. We're going to go ahead and reverse the swap of Altenac and Ferrisband Brawler. Altenac unfortunately sucks, and we decided we didn't really want to play 3 copies of Say Its Name. The Brawler is another FTK effect at 6 mana, but until we get another interesting expensive card, we're just going to slot this one back in. That'll take us into our multicolor and colorless section, where we only have a couple of swaps. And I have to ask, does anyone actually think Cloud Blazer is particularly interesting or good anymore? Cards are generating infinite value, and so spending 5 mana on Muldrifter is just not really compelling. The Wrangler is definitely a more narrow card, but if you can maximize it, this card is going to generate a ton of board presence, and it's the kind of stopgap we're looking for until we get ready to change blue-white's themes in this cube moving forward. Since we've cut cards like Soul Herder and other blink cards, the archetype just needs to be readdressed. It's not really doing anything particular. Finally, Tangle Tumbler is a really cool card, but I think only 1 or 2 of our players have ever actually tried it. The upside's definitely there, but Ash Barrens is just going to continue to make our fixing more solid now that we're going to post Rare Land World, which we sort of like. It also plays well with Containment Construct, which is another card we do run but don't explicitly support, and people don't play it very frequently, but it's one that we like a lot. All right, that's all, folks. We got a ton of cards to try, like we do every set in the Plooster era. I'm going to throw up our schedule here, and you can listen to us on the Jank Tank podcast to hear more of our thoughts on cube design and gameplay. Come out and join us on the Discord. We play this Peasant Cube at 7 p.m. on Saturdays, and it's very easy to access with an Arena account. They drown you in those common and uncommon wild cards. We have several other Peasant Cubes and even more rarity unrestricted cubes you can play. Foundation's supposed to be an on-ramp to MTG, so you can let our Peasant Cube be the on-ramp into the world of cubing, especially on Arena. We'll see you around.